getting ready for retirement is so much more than just about a number. It's so much more than just about how much money do you have or how much money do you want to spend. It really is about discovering what's truly going to be important for the rest of your life, because you're only going to be 60 one time. You're only going to be 61 one time. You're only going to get to see that grandchild first birthday one time, the 10th birthday one time. In other words, what are the things that are important?
Starting your route to retirement.
Hello, everybody. I'm Dean Barber, founder and CEO of Barber Financial Group. Welcome to the Guided Retirement Show. So glad you're taking some time to either watch us on YouTube or listen to us on your favorite podcast app. Last season, we got questions from you, our viewers and listeners, and I answered those questions for you. This season, for our season finale, we're going to share with you the questions that you should be asking your financial advisor, and just as importantly, the questions that your financial advisor should be prompting you to ask, and information that they should be delivering to you so that you can have clarity and confidence and control as you head into retirement. Please enjoy my conversation with Chris Rett, certified financial planner, as we tackle the top 20 questions that you should be asking your financial advisor. Before we hop into today's episode, I want to remind our listeners and viewers that you can access the same financial planning tools we use for our own clients on your own time, and all from the comfort of your own home. All you need to do is visit the link in the show notes and click the Start Planning button. From there, you can start building your retirement plan, no cost, no obligation. All right, Chris Rett, certified financial planner. Welcome back to the Guided Retirement Show.
Thank you for having me, Dean.
It's good to have you here. One of the things that I think messes people up when it comes to planning for retirement is they don't know what questions they should be asking. And years ago, we put out a piece called the Retirement Plan Checklist, which is a series of questions that you should have answered. And of course, over time, those questions evolve, and depending upon the stage of a person's life, those questions can differ. So what we thought we'd do today would be a little back and forth between you and me, and talk about the questions that people that are thinking about retirement in the next 5 to 10 years should be asking their financial advisor or their spouse or a significant other, so that they make sure that they're thinking of everything before they actually head into retirement. So let's rock and roll here. We got 20 questions that we want to get answers to.
Sounds great, Dean. No, I completely agree. So the first question that we thought of is, what should we be doing, or what should a couple or a client be doing to prepare for retirement? And a sub-question to that often gets overlooked is, what types of goals should we be setting for clients, and what sort of goals should they have as they're preparing for and entering retirement?
I believe that this is probably one of the most challenging things that a person has to do when they head into retirement, because if you think about it, our identity is tied to our career.
Purpose.
And so thinking of what is life going to look like after my career sometimes is very scary for people.
Mm-hmm.
It is, what's my value? What's my worth going to be?
What's my purpose? Yeah.
Right. So instead of thinking about it in terms of just retirement and no longer having to work, you need something to retire to. So to prepare for retirement, you really need to think about what you want your life to look like after retirement. And to do that, we have an amazing exercise that we walk through with people. It's called a prioritization exercise.
Mm-hmm.
And really what it does is it allows the couple to sit together with a certified financial planner, somebody that's got the expertise to understand what life really does look like after retirement. And we go through a prioritization exercise and really just explore what is important in your life and what are the things that are most important to you. And we start off with a list of, I think we have 20 different things that we can choose from. We narrow that down over a conversation that might last 45 minutes or an hour to the 5 things that are really the most important combined between the husband and wife. And then we can actually start to visualize what's that retirement going to look like.
That's exactly right. And how many times do we sit down with clients and we say, okay, you've got the green light, you've got the thumbs up, we're ready to retire in the next year. What does that look like for you? And we get blank stares, as we say, what does that look like? It involves some soul searching,
right?
Because
it's
that
scary.
answer it is scary, because again, it's so purpose driven, but it's also not a one size fits all. It's a very unique aspect to it that does require some soul searching.
Right. So outside of financial things that people need to do to prepare for retirement, they really need to prepare their psyche for that next phase of life.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the only way you can do it is to sit down and have an honest conversation with your spouse and really get to know what is the most important. And it might take 2 or 3 meetings with a good certified financial planner that has coached people through this for a number of years. But getting ready for retirement is so much more than just about a number. It's so much more than just about how much money do you have or how much money do you want to spend. It really is about discovering what's truly going to be important for the rest of your life, because you're only going to be 60 one time. You're only going to be 61 one time. You're only going to get to see that grandchild first birthday one time, the 10th birthday one time. In other words, what are the things that are important? And is it just a pile of money that's the most important thing to you? And if that's the case, it's probably going to be a pretty shallow retirement.
It is. And we talk about, like you said, is you're only 61, is that we've seen a lot of times is that once you retire, your health is really your wealth at that point, is being out and being able to do the things you've always wanted to do while you can do them.
Yep. That's really critical. Health is key.
Health is very key. We could spend all day on that one, but what is in talking about that, we talk about the financials. What is a real financial plan look like, and does or should a plan show probabilities of success?
So a real financial plan is not really investment driven. So I believe that a person shouldn't even begin to discuss an investment strategy with a certified financial planner until they have their complete financial plan built out. And what that really requires a person to do is what we talked about initially. You got to step into the future, and what do I want my future to really look like? And that's why we have to have that prioritization exercise, that honest conversation prior to building out that plan. But once you understand what that future is that you want it to look like, then you say, all right, well, what are all the components that I possess today, and what's my ability to save in the future? And you're going to look at dollars that you have now, dollars that you need to save between now and retirement. And a lot of times, Chris, we'll see people that are over saving that they could actually start doing some of the things that are important in their life now, and still be financially okay for retirement.
We see that a lot. Yeah.
Your financial plan should include a very, very thorough tax analysis that is a forward-looking tax analysis that allows a person to see what are the tax implications for me retrieving the funds that I've set aside over the years when I actually stop working. It should also include a thorough Social Security analysis and a very comprehensive plan for when and how you claim your Social Security. It should also include a thorough look at all of your risk management issues, such as a premature death of a husband or a wife, or a potential long-term care stay. And maybe it's even caring for an adult child that may financially struggle or something along those lines. And ultimately, it's also going to need to include a good, solid estate plan, which means what happens to the assets that you've accumulated at the end of your life as it passes to the next generation.
Absolutely. No different than we use it a lot, the oversimplification of a navigational plan when you're getting in your car and you're going somewhere for the first time is what potential obstacles do we have? What potential hazards lie in front of us with our ultimate goal of reaching our destination?
Right. It's a little bit easier with the GPS system, though, because, today with the crowdsourcing and everything that they do, you plug it in and you see, oh, there's traffic over here. There's less
Accident
traffic over
ahead.
there.
Yep.
And unfortunately, our lives don't follow a pattern, and there's always things that are going to come up that are unexpected. And so your financial plan should also be able to be adjusted and be live and be seen. Okay, these things happened in the economy. These things happened in the markets. These things happened in my life. My goals and my priorities have changed. And you should be able to, within minutes, be able to see how those things have adjusted your probability of getting to the destination that you want to get to in the way that you want to get there.
Yeah, and if you're not, the answer should be you probably don't have a comprehensive financial plan.
And Chris, I will tell you, I've been doing this for 35 years, and the number of people that I and the other certified financial planners here in our organization have sat down with for the very first time and they thought they had a plan, but when we look at it, it's really just a shell of a plan, or it might just be an investment strategy or something like that. Very rarely do we see, and my personal self, maybe a handful of times.
Same, yeah.
So it's just not something that people take the time to do because it requires dedication from the people that are going to be the ones heading into retirement. And it takes time and it takes some energy, but once it's in place, it's a pretty magical thing.
Which is why it comes back to why the importance of a show like this is 20, 30, 40 years of not asking or not knowing the questions to ask.
Right.
It's if we studied this our whole entire lives and we're always learning new things, is that if a client committed themselves, they still might not know all the things to ask or which rules apply. So
no doubt.
It is a lot. So you touched on something in the last piece that I think doesn't get talked about enough, is that a premature death in a plan. So what happens in the event that a husband, a spouse, or a wife passes away premature? We never know when the metaphorical sand runs out of the hourglass. What happens there? What concerns do we have? What implications arise?
Well, there's multiple things that happen, and a good financial plan will address all these things. Number one, the surviving spouse will be a single taxpayer, so with the same amount of income, they will go into a higher tax bracket, likely paying more taxes than what they paid as a married couple. The second thing that's going to happen is the smaller Social Security check is going to go away. If there happens to be a pension on the spouse that passed away, was there a survivor benefit on that pension? And then can the surviving spouse continue to live the lifestyle without those other sources of income? And so understanding that when you're looking at that, there may be a need to carry some sort of life insurance into retirement.
Yeah, we've seen it a lot of times where we even stress test for something like that and uncover a problem that we might not have already, known to look at. And again, thankfully, it doesn't happen too often, but we do see it enough that it is worth having a conversation on.
Well, that's one of your stress tests. Look and see what happens if somebody passes away.
Yeah. So a piggyback question off that, because it is important factoring that, is when is a good time to take Social Security or a spouse's Social Security?
So Social Security planning is an integral part of the overall financial plan. And there are many software packages out there today that you can plug in your Social Security earnings history, and it will tell you what's the optimum time for you to take it. You can do the same thing for your spouse. But what you have to do is you have to enter in both husband and wife and find the optimum way to claim Social Security. The difference between the best and worst claiming strategy for a married couple age 62 can often be $100,000 or more of additional lifetime income. But you can't stop there, because Social Security is tax different than any other asset. And so you have to take all those iterations of how you claim your Social Security, plug those into the plan and find out not just which one is the best for how to get the most out of Social Security, but which one's the best from a tax perspective. And it's the combination of those two things that's going to tell us when to take Social Security. So I wish there was an easy answer to that, but there really isn't. But it's critical that people get that right.
It is, and it's a unique scenario. What are our assets saved? What do we need spending? How old are we? What is our health like?
Right.
These are factors that, again, we don't know when the sand runs out of the hourglass, and that's an important factor when deciding when to take Social Security. But it is important to have it right.
Yep.
Where should our clients and our listeners be saving for retirement as they approach retirement, or maybe we have a listener that's even 20 years or 30 years old, just starting out their retirement savings?
So obviously, my favorite asset, or I'll call it tax bucket, is the Roth IRA, because the Roth IRA allows that money to accumulate tax-free, and then it also allows it to come in during retirement tax-free. And so, your qualified retirement plans are a great place to save, but you need tax diversification. And so when you think about saving money, don't just think about the underlying investment, whether it be your favorite stock or bond or fund or ETF or whatever. Think about it from a tax bucket. Does it need to be tax deferred? Should it be taxable? Should it be tax-free? And what we've seen over the years is that a person who builds good tax diversification can really control their taxes in retirement far more than somebody who just crams everything into the tax-deferred portion of their 401k.
Sure. Speaking of 401ks, are there Roth 401ks, and can you take your employer match by contributing to a Roth 401k?
Absolutely. Not every company offers a Roth 401k, but most of the big companies now will offer a Roth option. However, at this point in time, all of the company match will go into the traditional side of the 401k. There's legislation that's being talked about right now that would allow that employer to make the match into the Roth portion of the 401k, but that's not live at this point. So Roth 401k is a great way to save, especially for younger people, because they're going to probably be in the lowest tax bracket that they're ever going to be in, and they can get that money in there, and then it can grow tax-free. If somebody's in their peak earning years and they know that they're going to be in a lower bracket in retirement, we might suggest that they use the traditional 401k, get the bigger tax deduction now, and then do conversions after retirement where we can convert back to a Roth at a lower rate than what we're currently in our peak earning years.
Nope, that sounds great. And so that leads us into our next question. For years and years and years and decades, it's been told you'll be in a lower tax bracket in retirement. Is that always the case, or what do we typically see clients' tax rate in retirement?
So the answer is you can be in a lower tax bracket in retirement, but it takes pre-planning. Mm-hmm. It takes that tax diversification so that you can control the taxes in retirement. Most people who, and I say this is probably 90% of the people that we run into for the first time and have the ability to sit down and start talking to, they have painted themselves into a tax corner. They've saved the majority of what they have saved in the tax-deferred portion of their 401k. So every dollar that comes out of that in retirement is going to be taxable as ordinary income, both at the federal and the state level. And all of the distributions coming out of a traditional IRA will negatively impact your Social Security and how that is taxed. So if you want the same lifestyle in retirement that you had pre-retirement and all you have is tax-deferred money, chances are you won't be in a lower tax bracket in retirement. It takes planning, but you can actually be in a lower tax bracket in retirement with the proper tax diversification.
Sure. Nope. Makes complete sense. So that begs the question then, and you talked about it at previously, is Roth conversions a universal thing? Can everybody benefit? Who can benefit? What's a good time to Roth convert? What's a good reason to Roth convert?
Well, let's think about this from a perspective of our tax rates today, Chris. So when we look at tax rates today, where they are, knowing that the tax rates are going to sunset and we're going to go higher tax brackets in 2026, chances are that most of the people that are alive today, we're living in some of the lowest tax brackets that we're ever going to see. We got over $30 trillion of national debt, and the only way that our government can pay that off is by raising taxes. So if you can get money into a Roth IRA now at a reasonable rate, whether it be a conversion or whether it be a contribution to a Roth, absolutely the Roth makes sense for the vast majority of people. Now, I have seen cases where Roth conversions don't make sense. Totally depends on the overarching financial plan, right? You got to know everything before you can give that answer.
Nope, that makes sense. So looking at that is that how many times have you come across this where you say, okay, what is the spending plan? What is the budget? What do you spend on a monthly basis? And you get blank stares where a client, well, we just kind of spend whatever we need, and we've never really looked at that. How important is a budget in retirement?
So it's really critical, and it's not critical that it's a budget per se as amount of dollars that you can spend, but it's critical for us as financial planners to understand where you're spending your money. And the reason that that's important is inflation, because there are certain things that we spend money on that will inflate faster than other things. As an example, if somebody goes into retirement with a mortgage, well, that mortgage is not going to inflate. So we can't just go in and apply a blank rate or so, a fixed rate of inflation to every dollar that you spend. And your mortgage has a finite period, so it's going to end at some point in the future. That needs to be taken into consideration. And so when you look at it that way, Chris, I think it's really critical that you know where money is being spent so that the financial planner can then do the research and apply the right inflation rates to those areas: travel, food, entertainment, meals, those types of things. And it's not saying that you only can spend X dollars, but it's where are you spending those dollars so that we know as we're projecting it forward that you can truly continue to live the life you want to live.
So with that in mind, is what does a spending plan look like? What encompasses where clients should and listeners should take from their retirement?
So a spending plan is going to be a combination of a couple of different things. It's going to be not only where do you want to spend the money, but where are you going to get it from? And where you're going to get it from is going to be which asset class are you going to take it from first, second, third, and so on, and then which tax bucket or combination of tax buckets are you going to take it from. And a spending plan is ultimately designed to provide two things. One, a smooth ride, and two, tax efficiency throughout retirement.
Right. And so is how the buckets or the tax buckets and how they're invested, is that a determining factor in which bucket they should spend from?
100%. You really have to make sure that you've got the right asset class in the right tax bucket. And it all depends on what your spending plan is. And things change in people's lives. And so sometimes you might swap an asset class in one bucket for an asset class in another bucket. You keep the same allocation, you just change where they're located. So that's called asset location.
So you talked about the Secure Act a little bit earlier. You referenced it. How much has Secure Act changed estate planning? And is an estate plan revisit, redo? Is that? Do you think that's a necessity for a lot of our clients and listeners?
So most people save the majority of their money in what are called qualified plans, IRAs and 401ks and 403bs and TSPs and 457s and all of these different numbered retirement type accounts out there, because ultimately most of those wind up in an IRA. So the Secure Act drastically changed the rules for your beneficiaries inheriting that. Now, we don't have time to go into all those different rules, but suffice it to say, there are multiple ways that your beneficiaries will be getting money out of those accounts. And it depends on the age and the relationship of the beneficiary. It also depends on the age and the relationship of the IRA owner. So for the IRA owner, the person that's going into retirement, it's not going to affect how they spend or what they do. But if they care about keeping Uncle Sam out of the coffers of that IRA as much as possible when it passes to the next generation, the answer is absolutely. It changes estate planning drastically. And trusts need to be revisited. Beneficiary forms on IRAs need to be revisited. And that's something that should really be done every other year at least anyway.
Right. And that's going to be another question that breeds into what we were just going to ask is how often should we be revisiting beneficiaries, and how do we check if our beneficiaries are current, and how often should an advisor be talking about estate plans and beneficiaries?
So the one key is that a beneficiary form with the IRA custodian will trump any legal document. So you may have a trust set up that says, I'm going to split this money amongst my 4 kids and they're going to get half of it, and then my grandkids are going to get the other half. But if your IRA doesn't reflect that that's the beneficiary form with your IRA doesn't reflect that that's the way it's going to go, that's not the way it's going to go. So a lot of people, we've seen this happen in the past, they go and they get a trust done and they think that trust is now going to take care of all of the issues, but it doesn't, especially not with IRAs. IRAs have their own beneficiary form that has to be done properly, and it has to reflect your wishes. So it needs to be revisited at least every other year.
I would think at least. Yes, absolutely. So with that in mind, is that you talked about the transfer of wealth and setting up tax efficiencies. Should a financial advisor be working with who the client has designated to be their CPA? And conversely to that is, what happens if a financial advisor is recommending one thing, and perhaps we don't see it too often, but we do see it, is that a CPA that a client's working with is recommending something exactly the opposite? Who can a client trust?
It gets really confusing, Chris, because a lot of times, I would say the vast majority of the time, the CPA and the financial advisor are not talking. And so,
and they should be.
They should be. There's something lost in translation between the financial advisor says this, the CPA says that. In most cases, the CPA does not know the overall financial plan. They don't know the overarching objectives of what the plan is designed to do for the individual. So a lot of times when the CPA is saying something that is in conflict with what the certified financial planner is saying, it's because they don't understand the big picture, which is why we have our own CPAs in-house. So as we're drafting the plan, the CPA gets to review that plan from a tax perspective, and that really gives the synergy to the client to say, all right, now not only I look at this from a financial standpoint, I'm looking at it from a tax standpoint, and my CPA and my financial planner are sitting side by side with me in the room, and it makes sense.
So how does Medicare play into all of this?
Well, of course, Healthcare is probably going to be one of the largest expenses that people will incur during retirement. And so you'd get a medical expert and they'd say healthcare is the biggest cost, and you get a tax expert and they're going to say no, taxes are going to be the biggest cost. So Medicare is really critical because it is the platform for healthcare during retirement. And then it gets convoluted because it's the alphabet soup of Medicare planning and all the different Medicare supplements and what should you have and what should your spouse have. And there's a whole litany of things that goes into Medicare planning, but that's obviously important because if you don't plan for it properly, like I said, it can be as big a wealth eroding factor as taxes during retirement.
So how can a client determine, and I think we talked about this earlier in the financial plan, is whether they're over or underinsured, and what different types of insurance are there that clients should be looking at as they're preparing and entering and even in retirement?
Look, let's face the facts. Insurance is something that you never want to use. Nobody ever buys an insurance policy saying, I can't wait till the day I get to file my claim. All right. Insurance should be looked at strictly as a risk management tool, and it's to remove the risk of financial ruin from the individual who is purchasing the insurance. So insurance should be looked at strictly as a risk management thing. So once we understand what is a person's overall objectives, what are the resources that they have, what are the potential risks that are out there, whether it be long-term care, whether it be premature death, whether it be property casualty, whether it be Medicare supplements, health insurance, whatever it is, we can then look at the plan and say, here's the proper amounts. And then it's to the certified financial planner's job to then review the insurances that people have and say, are we adequately covered? Are we underinsured or are we overinsured? And ultimately what you want is the Goldilocks of the insurance. You want what's just right. You don't want to spend any more than what you have to, and you want to make sure that you got the right coverage across the board for all risk.
Nope, that makes complete sense. So how important is long-term care, and what are the odds that somebody might even find themselves in a long-term care facility in retirement?
So the odds are pretty good that one of the spouses will spend some time in a long-term care facility. The numbers that you see can range anywhere from 70 to 80% of people are going to of one of the spouses is going to spend some time in a long-term care facility. What you have to ask is, what is the financial impact on the surviving spouse of that long-term care expense? And do you have enough wealth to self-insure, or do you need to seek out insurance that can cover long-term care? In most cases, when we see that a person needs some sort of extra coverage, we'll recommend a life insurance policy that's got a critical care rider on it that will allow a person to access a portion of that death benefit while they're alive to pay for long-term care. It's tax-free. And if they don't use it, then the death benefit goes to the surviving spouse or the beneficiaries tax-free as well. It's the only type of insurance, Chris, that you're ever going to have that's going to be guaranteed to pay out more to you or your beneficiaries than you'll ever pay in premiums.
Yep. No, and how many times have we seen, I'm sure you've seen it a lot more than I have, is how many times have clients come to us with long-term care policies that never end up using it, and all those premiums just go to those that end up using it.
Right. And not only that, but then you see the premiums increasing at double-digit rates lately. So yeah, the life insurance with the critical care rider on is really the best avenue, I believe, for tackling that long-term care.
If it's needed in the first place.
And if you can qualify for it.
That's exactly right.
'Cause you got to be healthy.
Yep, which we talked about that earlier. Inflation seems to be a hot topic right now. Is that, and it's most recently, probably the last time we really talked about that would be the 80s of some type. How should clients be planning for inflation in their plan? What types of things should advisors be bringing to the table to clients for to compensate for inflation?
So one of the most critical things that people should be doing when they're building their financial plan is they should be putting as much stress on the plan as possible. So you want to go in and apply a larger inflation rate than the historical average, just in case there's more inflation in the future. Now, if there's not more inflation in the future, then that's going to give you the ability to spend more money in the future. But going back to the spending plan and knowing what you're spending money on and applying the right inflation rate to the right spending pattern, that's going to be critical. So for an example, health insurances and healthcare costs are increasing at an average rate of about 6.8% per year. So you want to build that into your healthcare expenses. You know, if you're traveling, maybe that's going up at 2 to 3% a year. So you need to take a look at what those are, but it's really, really, really important that inflation's built in properly, because inflation isn't something that will ever cause a person that reaches retirement successfully to go broke. What it will do, if they haven't planned for it properly, it will cause them to live like they're broke because they didn't factor it in, and so now they can't afford to do the things they want to do, and they'll never spend more than what they can because they're fearful of running out of money. More fearful of running out of money than they are of not being able to do all the things that was ideal in their life.
So I know that investments are important, but how important are the asset allocations, the diversification, the level of risk that clients take? And it's an interesting time this year specifically, is that traditionally we see that the stock market, when it's up, the bond market, it tends to be flat or maybe even down a little bit, or conversely, is the bond market is down, you typically see the stock market up. This year is a little bit unique in a sense that both are down significantly. How important is investment planning and planning for such an event, and where do clients go if both stocks and bonds find themselves more correlated than ever and both down at the same time?
So let's first start with the fact that the investment in your financial plan is like the engine in your car. It's how you get to where you're going to go. So the investments are very, very important. But one of the things that I think people lose sight of, Chris, is that when you transition into retirement, you're now in the decumulation phase. In other words, you're asking your money to produce income for you so that you can continue to live the life that you want to live. The real trick on the investments is to not to compare yourself or your portfolio to any major index. Don't compare your investments in retirement to what the S&P 500 are doing. Don't compare your investments in retirement to what the bond ag is doing. If you've done the right job in financial planning, you can create something called your PRI, and that is your personal retirement index. What that is that is equal to the return that your money needs to achieve on average in order for you to do all the things you want to do in retirement. If you can identify that, then working with a good certified financial planner and a good portfolio developer, you can design a portfolio that is designed to historically achieve that rate of return with the very least amount of risk possible. So it's something that you need to remove emotion from and take a very scientific approach to it.
Yeah, and understand throughout the time is that there's going to be years where you outperform that, and that's gravy, but you're also going to come under that and perhaps leave some money on the table.
It needs to be flexible. Mm-hmm. You need to be able to make adjustments at a moment's notice because you never know what's going to happen.
Yep. Which breeds this question. By every statistical category and indicator, it appears we're either in the middle of a recession or trending to a recession. What should and what changes, as you mentioned, should some of our clients and listeners be doing, or at least having conversations with their financial advisors and planners about what to do if they're retired and we enter a recession, or if they're retiring in a recession, or if a recession occurs just as they're about to retire?
It's a great question, Chris, and that takes us all the way back to number one. First question you asked. If you've built the financial plan properly, if your financial plan has done everything that it's supposed to do, your financial plan should be built to take into consideration that poor market conditions or poor economic conditions can occur at any point during your plan. And it should be constructed with the confidence that you can go through those times because you've already thought through all of those different things. Where the recession will hurt people is when they don't have a plan, they don't have a strategy, so they don't have any clarity on how my things are going to react. And so then the emotions of fear and greed take over, and in a recession, it's more an emotion of fear, and that causes people to make bad decisions. So I'm going to go back to the plan again. Mm-hmm. That's the cornerstone. If you've done that and you stress tested through recessionary times and you know that your plan works, then keep living your life and do what you want to do.
Sure. So we've seen this year more than a lot of years, interest rates and us paying attention to what the Fed is doing. So interest rates have been quite a topic of conversation. We've seen probably the most interest rate hikes that we've seen in a year, and the greatest transition of interest rate hikes that we've ever seen. What are some of the different ways that clients and listeners can take advantage of some of these interest rate hikes? Is it time to start having that conversation of individual bonds and RCDs becoming more of a conversation?
So the answer to both of those is yes. CDs are becoming more of a conversation because you can actually make something on them today. However, I believe where the opportunity exists as we record this podcast, Chris, is in United States Treasury bills. We can go out today as we record this podcast and we can buy a 3-month Treasury bill that's yielding higher than a 10-year Treasury bill. And we can, and not by a lot, but it's 4.2 versus 4.1, but we can go to a 6-month Treasury bill and get 4.6. All right. So what I would say in this type of an environment, if somebody wants something that's fixed and secure and safe, you ladder some Treasuries and do it where you'd buy some in a 3-month, some in a 6-month, some in a 1 year. And as soon as the 3-month one matures, do a 6-month one. And that way, every 3 months, you've got liquidity with that Treasury. You're getting a decent rate because at some point in time, what's going to happen is you're either going to want to lock in a longer term rate if fixed income is where you want to be, or you're going to identify that this recession is coming to an end and there is some bargain basement prices out there on some of your favorite ETFs or stocks or mutual funds that you can hop back in and get a nice ride up.
Last and probably not least, other than the financial plan, is how does a listener or a client know if they're with the right financial planner, and how do they evaluate if theirs is doing a good job? I know the market's down in a lot of different indexes and a lot of different asset classes, so that might not always be the best judge. But how does a client truly evaluate if their advisor's doing a good job, or if it's time for looking at different advisors?
So here's what you do. You go back to the entire list that we just laid out, all right? First of all, you ask the question, do you have a financial plan? That is what we discussed earlier. Did your financial plan include tax planning? Did your financial plan include Social Security planning? Did your financial plan include stress testing for all the possible risks that are out there in the future? Did your financial plan include an estate planning objectives? Does your financial plan allow your portfolio to be built with the least amount of risk possible? And has that been quantified to you? Is your financial plan able to show how these changes in economic and market conditions are affecting your probability of success? Does your financial advisor communicate with you on a regular basis? Are they available when you call them? Can they explain things in a way where it makes sense to you instead of talking over your head? Do you have a good relationship with that person? Your financial planner, your certified financial planner, should be somebody that you can turn to with any kind of financial question and any kind of life management question, because their job is to help provide clarity, confidence, and control in your financial future. And that really is how you're going to define whether you've got the right advisor or not. And if there's any question in a person's mind, what they need to do is seek out a second opinion. And don't just get one, get two, get three. If you've been with somebody for a long period of time and you're not feeling really, really comfortable, go interview some other people. But let me tell you this. If you go talk to somebody and they start telling you how great their investment strategies are, you need to get up and walk out, because it should never, ever, ever begin with that conversation.
Because that could change at any time.
Absolutely.
No, this has been fun, Dean. I've had a really great time, and hopefully our listeners learned a thing or two and go with this and ask their financial advisors, or our clients bring it to us as well.
Well, and if you're not a client, obviously we would love to talk to you. So and of course, we don't have products to sell. All of our certified financial planners are salaried people. And so we're really here to do what is in the best interest of the individual. We don't receive commissions or anything like that. So, if people decide to hire us, we very clearly lay out, here's how we get paid, and this is what you're going to pay us to do, and here's our value proposition.
And a good financial advisor, and I say this coming from us, is that, they should be bringing these questions to you even if you're not asking them.
Absolutely.
So this is something that I think we do, speaking highly of ourselves, is we do a great job of doing that, because not everybody knows to answer this, and we know that. That's why we bring the questions to them. So this is a great place to start, but a good financial planner and a good financial planning firm should be bringing not only these, but questions like these to their client.
Absolutely. Chris, thanks for taking time to be part of the Guided Retirement Show.
Yep. Thank you.
Thanks again for joining me here on the Guided Retirement Show. Hope you enjoyed the Q&A session with Chris Rett, Certified Financial Planner, and myself. We're so excited that you're part of our audience. And I want to let you know that this is the season finale. We will be back with a brand new season starting in January of 2023.
Starting your route to retirement.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to leave a comment and share this episode with your friends.
Investment advisory services offered through Barber Financial Group and SEC registered investment advisor.